Welcome to Valley Viewpoint. I'm Roger Johnson. My guest is Don Casebolt. He's a retired physician, and he is still attempting to convince us to help us live more healthfully, or better health.
Right.
You're still at it, Don. You've been writing in the UB for several years.
Yeah.
And how many articles have you given to the UB about health?
Well, I've given 88, and they've published 87.
My, I mean, that's amazing. They've received 88,
Yeah.
and they took 87.
Right.
Well, I won't even ask you what they didn't take, but that's amazing average. I couldn't even come close to doing anything in that way. Well, Don, you would like to talk about health and endurance.
Right.
Endurance.
Right.
I understand that you personally like to go from rim to rim. Could you unpack that for our viewing family?
Yes. In 1994, I was working at the Northern Navajo Medical Center in Shiprock, New Mexico. I was probably the only vegetarian on the staff, or anyway, there weren't very many. I was in an office. The other doctors came back from the weekend. It was where we just did our paperwork, and they were telling me about the wonderful meats that they had, and I got the feeling that they were feeling sorry for me that I didn't eat meat, but they didn't know that I was feeling sorry for them that they did.
You mean clear back then you're starting to feel sorry for those that were enjoying meat?
Yes,
you
I
were.
was. Oh yes.
Okay.
It's not healthy food.
All right, you're going to unpack that for
Right.
some of us out there.
Right. So I decided, I had already hiked across the Grand Canyon 3 times before then. I decided to invite anybody in the hospital staff to go with me. 2 young doctors decided to go with me. So we drove over to the Grand Canyon. It was about 150 miles over there from Shiprock, and so drove over Friday and stayed over Saturday over the Sabbath. And on Sunday morning, as soon as we could hit the trail, as soon as it was light, we started out. And
How long is this rim to rim?
23 and a half miles.
23 and a half miles. And
Right.
many years ago, I went down a little bit and then came up. And when it just gave me a taste of what you're talking about. Many probably that are watching have been to the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
But the trip down to the Colorado River
Right.
and then up the other side is 23 and a half miles.
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And you try to do this in one
day.
One day.
Yeah.
One day. You don't enjoy a camp out next to the Colorado?
Well, we stopped at the Colorado River at noon.
To have lunch?
Yes, to have lunch.
Okay.
And as I was eating lunch, my wife had given me one of these, some people call fake meat wieners. And
the soy product.
Yeah, soy product. And she put 2 in my lunch, and I was eating one of them. And then I said, these fellows see me eating this, and they may think that I've, jumped the traces here as far as my vegetarian diet.
Oh, your commitment might be compromised by these things.
So I broke it in half and gave half of them to each of them, and they ate it. And then I lied down and took a brief nap, and then we started out. Well, it's one thing to get to the bottom. It's warm down there, even in the end of September.
Oh my!
And so we started out going up, and it was hot, and we were stopping about every 10 minutes to rest. And I had told my wife, who went with me and drove the car around, it's 250 miles around from the north to the south rim.
Like from here to Portland, then.
Yeah, right.
Oh my.
And I said, now don't be worried. These young men were both doctors, athletic, and they were less than half my age.
Less than half your age.
Right, I was 66 years old at the time. And so I said, don't worry about it. If they get out ahead of me, I'll make it, because I've done it. That was the 4th time. But when we were getting toward the end, I was out about 100 feet ahead of them. I wasn't that I was trying to do that, but all our pants were dragging, so to speak. And
As they should be after that.
And one of those young doctors hollered out and said, Dr. Casebolt, can you tell us where we can get a couple of cases of those wieners? Well, I knew that I'd made my point, okay? And so now my wife and I was too tired to go back that night, but those doctors drove back that night. So I missed Monday, but when I got back to the hospital, I knew that everybody in the hospital knew what had happened.
Because?
These guys came and told about it. So.
You could just feel it. You could tell it. And
right.
then was there a session where what was happening that week?
Yes. Well, actually, while I was there, I was in charge of the weekly continuing medical education courses, and I would schedule those. So I had already had it scheduled. That was you got there about the end of September, on the hike. And so I scheduled a meeting in January about the vegetarian advantage.
And that's what it was titled, the Vegetarian Advantage.
The Vegetarian Advantage. And because of that, and I knew, because I was in charge of those, I would go to the meetings, and sometimes maybe it would be a third full or a half full. Mm-hmm. And when I gave my talk, every seat was filled, and people were standing around. They wanted to hear about it.
So you could tell that that the word was out.
Now,
and the vegetarian, the soybean product wasn't a detriment. In fact, it was an enhancer, apparently.
The vegetarian beat these young doctors. And of course, I savored that too.
Yeah.
But just as an interesting sidelight, at that hospital, there were 2 doctors, a husband and wife. He was an internal medicine doctor. I think she was family practice. And because of what they saw and heard, they decided to become vegetarians. And they have since mentioned that and thanked me more than once because of that.
Well, we're going to talk about what there could be that may explain some of this endurance and the health aspects of why plants over animal products. But I believe you wrote an article about 20 years ago about this.
Right, I did.
Show them the article that you showed me. And it says, Rim to Rim, How Diet and Exercise Kept Donald Casebolt Hiking Through the Grand Canyon. That is an amazing story. You have your picture on the front, and outstanding. Well, tell me about some, we might say, ancient descriptions of how people would compare the Bible's suggested diet with what happened after the flood.
Yeah. Well, of course, we don't know exactly what some of those really ancient people did, but there's been some very interesting things done in the 18th century and the 19th century. Studies done, and one of the things, one of the things we want to get across, of course, is that eaters of whole plant food diets have significantly greater stamina and endurance than meat eaters, and some people have poked fun at that concept, and they wrote this. They described vegetarians as gaunt, wry-faced, lantern-jawed, ghostly-looking individuals. That's what.
Now, as a doctor, how is there a possibility that there are some quite unattractive vegetarians out there?
Well, I
mean, how did that get going?
Well, I think that some of them may have been thinner. I'm not overweight by
no, you're
stretch
not.
of the imagination, and some of the others. But I'm not a young man anymore, and I can still. I mowed my lawn this morning. No.
Yeah, talk to us. You mowed your lawn today?
Yes, I mowed my lawn. I spent about an hour from almost most of the morning working in my garden and yard.
And I hope it was early because of the temperatures.
Yeah, I was out there till almost noon, you know, and
oh,
so
I
was
wouldn't
warm.
advise that tomorrow. At least don't get this heat. But tell us about how many birthdays have you had?
Well, I tell people I'm pushing 89.
Pushing 89,
right.
mowing your lawn, and what do you do to keep going?
Well, there are several things that I do. One, I have 2 5-pound dumbbells, and I take these dumbbells and I can do like this. Yeah, I can do 200 in about 8 minutes like this.
Wow.
And then I walk 6 days a week, to take a brisk walk 6 days a week. This helps to keep me from getting Alzheimer's disease. In fact, they say the most important thing to keep from getting Alzheimer's disease is exercise. And so I do that, and diet plays a role too. There's more and more evidence, you know. So, and endurance, there have been some very interesting studies done. Do we have time to talk about the study that was done?
We're going to talk about this related to what you just did.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about endurance as it relates to what they were doing about a century ago about this after the break. And I also, during the break, have highlighted a book that you shared with me that I've invested several hours in that I could hardly put it down. This book, How Not to Die, by Dr. Greger. And this book held my attention in an incredible way. And unfortunately, Dr. Casebolt has not finished it, and so he will not let me take it home tonight. But he did let me borrow it until this interview. I'm sure you feel sorry for me. But anyway, I'm first in line. But it's an outstanding book so far, and I can hardly wait to get into it further. So we'll talk more about How Not to Die after the break. We're talking about health and endurance and issues of what we put in our bodies for the endurance. I believe, Dr. Casebolt, that a lot of people have come to your office over the years and tell you, Doctor, why am I so tired? You know, and we're talking about endurance. Right. Talk to us about these. You were demonstrating that every morning you do 200 of these.
Yeah.
What about some of those early experiments comparing those that are enjoying their meat over those that are enjoying their beans, so to speak?
Okay. Well, actually, back in the 18th century, the 18th and 19th century, they were doing there was concerns about this. Actually, this goes clear back to a Greek philosopher by the name of Pythagoras, who advocated a vegetarian diet. Now, that wasn't his main thing, but anyway, in 1907, there was a well-known, in fact, a world-renowned economist who was also very interested in vegetarianism and healthful living. And he was acquainted with a Dr. Harvey Kellogg, who was the main doctor for the Battle Creek Sanitarium and Hospital, which was a Seventh-day Adventist institution. And so he proposed a contest between Yale athletes. He had 15 between the ages of 20 and 30, and he wanted them to do a contest through the employees of this sanitarium. And so he proposed several tests. One was holding arms out like that. How long can you do that? And then lying down and lifting your legs, and then doing a deep knee bend. And this was very interesting, and ended up being a real disappointment to this Irving Fisher was this man's name, because this arm holding thing, only 2 of the Yale men could do it more than 15 minutes. Only 2 of them. But of the employees from the Battle Creek Sanitarium Hospital, there was, I think, most of them did, and one of them was actually able to do it for 3 hours.
3 hours?
Like that. 3 hours.
Compared to the 10 minutes?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
and then the rather interesting thing was that while they were doing this, the 6-year-old son of one of the employees, one of these from the sanitarium, came and did it for 41 minutes. And this about blew away this Fisher. He was a Yale University graduate, and he wrote this in the Yale University newspaper. I was able to access
Even
it.
though he was disappointed, he actually was willing to share this contest.
Oh yes, he was.
With the Yale readers.
Oh yes, and I was able to access a copy of that. I read it,
Oh my.
and
well, we have to give him a lot of credit for being willing to publish something like that.
That's
even though
true.
he was certainly saying this can't be.
That's true.
But it happened.
Yeah, but then actually there have been other tests done since then. And,
I would think so with those tests.
The Swedes have been very interested in this sort of a thing. And they've done in 1967, I think it was. Now I've got it written down. In 1967, they took 9 physical education students and did some tests with them. They fed them 3 different diets. One was a high-fat, high-meat diet.
Mm-hmm.
One was a mixed diet, and one was basically a vegetarian diet. Mm-hmm. And then they had them ride on a stationary bicycle till they ran out of gas.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was that they all these men did all these things. In other words, it wasn't that one group of men did the one. They started out with a high what we call the protein diet, and the average pedaling time was about let's see here. I've got it here. It was 59. 59 minutes was the average time that these men could pedal till they had to quit. Mm-hmm. Okay. Then, and with the intermediate diet, which was a mixture, they could do 126 minutes.
Wow.
But,
that's a big advance.
Yeah, but when they got to the vegetarian diet, it was 189 minutes. That's more than 3 times as long. The same men doing the same thing.
Okay, the first group was 90, 93?
59 minutes.
59.
That was the average work time that they could do. 59
average
minutes.
of this group.
Right.
Okay.
And then the next one, the medium diet, is sort of a mixture,
Yes.
was 126. And
126.
and then the last one was 189 minutes.
Okay.
That's more than 3 times as much. That would be a 300% difference.
Between the first group and the third group.
Yeah, yeah.
Incredible.
But it was all the same men, so
Oh.
Yeah. See,
Okay, so
they all did the one that the average work time was 59. That was the high protein, high fat diet. Then they all did the medium one. Then they all of them did the vegetarian diet.
So we're not talking about 2 or 3 different types of groups of individuals. The same group of individuals fed this diet for a certain amount of time, then they did the bicycle thing.
Right.
And then they changed their diet.
Right.
And then they changed their diet again.
Yeah, they had a 3-day washout period between.
Only 3 days.
Yeah.
Oh my.
But then
Huge.
so it's all the same men, and it's a remarkable difference. And this was not the only time that they had earlier, and I can't remember, just earlier somebody else had done a study and found that well, here it is. In 1939, 2 Swedes did something like that, and the work time was 210 minutes compared to only minutes 80 minutes after an equal time on a high-fat diet. So
Mm.
they were 3 to 7 days on a predominantly unrefined carbohydrate intake, that is plant foods, and they were able to do 210 minutes compared to only 80 minutes
Oh
after an
my.
equal time on a high-fat diet.
So,
here's-
doctor,
Yes.
I'm so tired. Can you do something for me to help me? I'm so tired.
I'm gonna teach you how to eat whole plant foods. I'm gonna have you buy the
I'm gonna
book.
have you buy this book, How Not to Die. I suppose tiredness is kind of like, I feel like I'm dying, so to speak. You know, I just feel like
Yeah.
I just don't have the headroom.
Well,
And this book certainly will give you a lot of the latest research. I
Right.
noticed this was published last year.
yeah.
And it is an amazing collection and so well written and organized.
And it's so well referenced. That's
Yes,
that's the
I mean,
thing that I
there's
really
just
like about it.
thousands of references.
And they've done
in
some
it.
fascinating studies to see how just dripping fluid from some of these different diets into dishes with cancer cells, how it affects the cancer cells. That's an amazing thing.
Just what they have done with extracts you know,
Yeah.
from the various plant foods,
Yeah.
as you say, in the
Yeah.
dishes.
Yeah.
This author I read, and you and I were amazed, he dedicated this book to his grandmother. Tell our audience why.
Well, his grandmother had heart trouble so bad that she could hardly walk out to get the mail. And the doctors had done everything they could for her, and so told
Put
her
in all the stents they could put in.
Yeah.
They did all the replacements.
They've
She had
done all
nothing
that.
left.
Yeah.
She was basically out to pasture to die.
That's right. That's right.
And somebody by the name of Pritikin,
Right. Pritikin, I first heard about him years
when
ago.
this author was a small boy,
Yeah.
Grandma goes to Pritikin, and in short order, she was walking 10 miles a
Right.
day.
Yeah, she went on a whole plant food diet. Pritikin had become convinced, apart from seeing what happened to other cultures that don't eat like we do, he devised this whole plant food diet, and she was able to go ahead and live.
Well, when you get your copy, you will find out right away why he dedicated this book to his grandmother. And of course, we just told you why,
Yeah.
but there's certainly more facts. You have recommended a YouTube, 45-minute YouTube in this article. What's that about? Obviously it's about the same thing, about endurance.
Yes, that YouTube is something by the Harvard School of Public Health. It's a very compelling thing as far as I'm concerned. They put it out earlier this year, and it's the Harvard School of Public Health. That's one of the top schools in the nation, and Walter Willett, who's one of the top nutritionists in the world.
Is he on that?
He's on that panel.
Oh my, no wonder
Yeah.
you recommended that then.
Yeah.
Yes, and that is on our contact information too, the information to get to that 45-minute
Right.
video on YouTube.
And one of the other things is that I didn't really realize that somebody from the American Cancer Society is on there, and they point out that there are 7 cancers that diet plays a definite role in the causation of these cancers, and people need to know about that. And I didn't really realize there were that many myself. And I'm frequently looking at the literature.
Dr. Casebolt, you pushing 89, if you keep reading books like this, you're going to be on the cutting edge, and certainly you can be on the cutting edge of what's happening in the world of nutrition. We're in a renaissance age of what is available to you and I through people like Don Casebolt and through people like this author, Michael Greger. I want to thank you for joining us on Valley Viewpoint. Thank you, Don, for joining us.
My pleasure.
And thank you again. I'm Roger Johnson.